Kim Jacobs Show. Listen, we have a great show lined up for you. I'm your host, Kim Jacobs, better known as the Balance Doctor. And all of our guests that come on, they're either people that have overcome some tremendous odds in their own lives as they balance this thing called life, or they're experts and they're here to share tips and strategies that will help you better balance and manage your life. Grab your virtual seats and let's get ready for some real, relevant, and relatable content on today's episode of The Kim Jacobs Show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of The Kim Jacobs Show. Hope you guys are having a fantastic week. I'm super glad to have with us today April Martin Gregory. How are you, April?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for allowing me to discuss something I'm very passionate about.
Well, I am so looking forward to learning more about this. And on The Kim Jacobs Show, we provide balance to this whole world, one household at a time. So we're hoping that you getting in your virtual seats, letting us know where you're visiting in from, that this piece of the puzzle might be a blessing to your household today. So go ahead and share the broadcast and invite your friends, your family, people that you think, maybe people that have ADHD, people that you don't have to start tag. If you tag people and then you say, yeah, just whatever person you think would benefit from today's discussion. We're learning about how to train the brain. Some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today, I simply did not know. So I'm so eager to learn from April Gregory today. How do we train our brain to be subjected to us, submitted to our authority, which I believe personally we have great authority and dominion over this earth. So I'm sure we can do something to kind of be more in control of the brain, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I can't wait. So in a nutshell, before we even go really deep into everything, tell people in like 30 seconds or less what we can expect to hear from today's episode from you, April.
So I'm going to tell you what neurofeedback is, what a typical session looks like, who it can help. We take dysregulated brain waves and we regulate them. And when we do that, it gives us the tools in the toolbox to make better choices.
So we're going to have some tools in the toolbox to make better choices pertaining to our brain through a neurofeedback process that April Gregory is going to be talking to us about today. So I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to share and encourage people to come in. If you have questions while April's here today, make sure you ask those questions as well. Let me go ahead and introduce you, April. And let me also say, too, that brain training helps with ADHD, anxiety, autism, depression, insomnia, learning disorders, memory loss, migraines, peak performance, PTSD, substance use disorders, all kinds of things. So anybody can benefit from hearing today's conversation. So April M. Martin Gregory is a BrainCore certified technician. She's a lifelong resident in the Tri-Cities area and graduated from Milligan College with a BS in business administration. And I'm going to let her, in her bio, it says a lot about some things she's experienced in her own journey and some people that are pretty important to her have experienced as well. So I'm going to let her talk about those things herself versus reading them. And I'm elated to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So let's jump right into our discussion. Yeah. Take me back for a few minutes. Just take us back on your journey. How did this all begin? You personally experienced something that kind of brought you where you are today. So just tell us a little bit about your backstory.
So a little over 30 years ago, I was diagnosed with a brain disorder called spasmodic dysphonia. I'd never heard of it. It took me 2 years and 10 doctors to be diagnosed. I was actually diagnosed at Wake Forest. There's a voice center there. And I remember crying all the way home, thinking, it's my brain and there's nothing I can do about it. So I started researching it immediately. And you can imagine 30 years ago, I found neurofeedback, but knew nothing about it, didn't
Right.
know where to even begin. And so throughout my journey with spasmodic dysphonia, I've been to California and Florida and many places in between trying to find something. The treatment for it is Botox, and they inject Botox in your vocal cords, and it does work. But, it's just my personality. I wanted to find something else that might cure it. Botox is just a Band-Aid.
Right.
Well, um, several years ago, I finally found a place locally that did neurofeedback. I was just ecstatic. So I made my appointment. I went in to see them, and the first thing they said was, "Well, it won't help you." And so I thought, well, how do they know this is such a rare problem? I'm still going to do it.
Right.
You were right. It did not fix my brain disorder, but I received so many benefits from it. One of the things I noticed right away, my husband and I took a long weekend trip and I read 3 books and I maintained what I read. And I was like, this is phenomenal.
Right.
And so my husband, he was the CEO of a pharmaceutical manufacturing company and he has ADHD. And he would read these 30-page technical documents. And he said he used to have to get up, after 3 paragraphs and take a break. And when he was brain
Right.
training, he said he was on page 15 and he knew what he had read. So I was like, this is pretty amazing. So we sent my grandson, who's ADHD. Within the first week, the preschool was like, "What's going on with Jackson?" And we were like, "He's brain training." So brain training just gives you, I say it all the time, it gives you the tools in the toolbox to be the best you can be. We
Wow.
don't really do anything for brain health. We watch our diet, we exercise, we do all these things, but we do nothing for our brains. And so think of brain training as exercise for the brain. So it just helps your brain be the best it can be. When we have dysregulated brain waves, it causes, like if you're dysregulated with delta theta, you probably have ADHD, autism, OCD, all the things. Our delta theta brain waves are sleep brain waves. So if they're too high during the day, like a child that's typically who has ADHD, well, they're acting out to try to stay awake because their
Right.
delta theta is dysregulated and it's the sleep brain waves. So we try to, they'll act out, be impulsive, make all the bad choices because they're trying to wake their brain up and they
That's
don't even realize it.
right.
So once you get those regulated, we see it happen as your brain training. Then they start to come down. We look for 3 things when we're brain training. We want
Okay.
them to be in a certain order. We want it to be delta, theta, alpha, beta, and high beta. And we want them to be at a certain magnitude. So think power. So we want delta to be at about 12. So with a kid who has ADHD, it goes up to 20. The chart will measure them up to 20. Well, when they start, they'll ride along that 20 line because they're so high. But as they get regulated, they'll start to come down. And so then they have better control. I'm always reaching out to parents because I see their sessions. So with me, most patients brain train at home. So I have home systems. So you can do it at home. So when you're at home, you're in your safe place. You don't have to stress about getting to my office for an appointment and all the things. But I can see your session. And so I'm talking to parents, hey,
So virtual.
yes. So today, Susie, she had a great session. How was their behavior?
Mhm.
And almost always their behavior is going to mimic what their session was. If it's
Right.
really off the charts, I know the child's had a rough day.
Mm.
So,
So what I'm hearing you say is that you personally had a brain disorder
yes,
and went to Wake Forest. I was taking some notes over here on what
yes,
you were saying. You went to Wake Forest. You were seen by 10 different doctors,
yes.
and they ultimately injected you with Botox
Both.
in your vocal cords
Yes.
because they were trying to correct the problem. But it was once you realized that it was a brain disorder that you could do some brain training, you were able to get a better handle on your own personal life.
Well, now, so neurofeedback does not help my vocal cord disorder. It's the part of the brain where Parkinson's originates.
Mhm.
So it doesn't really help me. So I still do Botox for my vocal cords. I'm actually scheduled to get one next week. But brain training helped me with so many other aspects, like remembering things, cognitively. When I was reading, I could retain what I read. And so after it's probably been 7 years since I'm brain trained.
Ah,
And so for like 3 or 4 years after I brain trained, I kept researching it because it made that much of an impact on me.
mhm.
And so in 2020, I asked my husband, I said, what would you think if I purchased a BrainCore franchise and got certified? I said, would you think I was crazy? And he was like, yes. But my husband is so incredibly supportive. It's just who I am. Like,
Right.
I want to research it to death. And it made such a positive impact on me. Like, what if I could share that with other
With
people?
other people.
And
So
so,
that's
yeah,
huge.
you change people's lives. Like, you have an ADHD child. The mom almost always calls me crying because it's a last resort.
Mhm.
And so the child comes in, we map them, they go home, they brain train, and then as their brain waves get regulated, it changes the child's life. The child doesn't want to be impulsive. The
Right.
child wants to behave, but they just can't. So then it changes the parents' lives, it changes the siblings, the teachers, the peers that they go to school with. So everybody's life gets improved because that child brain trained.
Mm. Okay. So I'm gathering so much information that I'm hearing from you. One thing that I want to ask the studio audience is what do you currently do to train your brain? Because that's not even a topic that I've ever even considered. So that's why whenever I find out about people like April Gregory, I'm so ecstatic about putting them on the Kim Jacob show so that you all can get exposed to things and resources and people that maybe you would have never encountered. So hopefully this is a ministry, in my opinion, because I'm
Yes,
helping to connect some resources to you that close the gap, that are liaisons and linking the gap to be able to have better outcomes for our lives. So I know how all of us we know somebody that's either a child or an adult that has ADHD. And I wonder, have any of the people that you personally know tried brain training? Please type your comments in the comment section and we'll pop them up on the screen. I see some of the questions that's already coming in. Someone wants to know, Mackenzie backstage, she wants to know, hey, how does this work? How does the brain training process work?
okay. So the first thing that you'll do is you'll come into the office, you'll get a map. It's a QEG. You wear one of the brain right there. It's an electro cap. I'll show
Yeah,
you.
I'm gonna pull it, I'm gonna put you more front and center so I can see this here.
So it's an electro cap. You have little ear clips, and you put this cap on, and then we put gel in each of the little sensor holes. And
Mhm.
what the gel does is the gel amplifies the brain waves. So the QEG is measuring delta, theta, alpha, beta, and high beta. And then half of the test is eyes closed, and that gives us a baseline. So after you brain train in a couple of months, if you wanted to come in and you wanted to be remapped, we could compare map 1 to map 2, the baseline. And then the other half of the test is eyes open, because we operate in an eyes open world. So that gives us the protocol. There's 26 different protocols, and there's 6 different sites that you can brain train at, and that's where the sensors would go. So then let's say you've come in, you're a candidate for brain training. So what does a session look like? So you can either train in my office or you can home train. And to do a brain training session, you watch something on a streaming service. It cannot be scary and it cannot be violent. We want the brain relaxed because we're teaching the brain something new. We're going to recreate new brainwave patterns. We're going to take the dysregulated brainwave patterns and regulate them.
So let me interject for a second,
Sure.
because if you're saying with the brain, we have our brain that we normally function with. It knows us. It kind of complies like a computer to what we take in. How, if that's what people normally watch, for you all to discover the outcome, why can't it be scary, or if that's what a person watches, or comedy or drama or
So
whatever?
I have had experienced that. I now tell parents Scooby-Doo is off limits, because I know, right? It's crazy. But I had this child who kept just having crazy sessions. And so I kept talking, and, one day I was like, well, what is your child watching? And it was Scooby-Doo. And we all know Scooby and Shaggy.
We all, let's put a disclaimer out here. These are, the views of our guests and everything. Yeah. Okay, so Scooby-Doo, many of us grew up on Scooby-Doo. So
yeah,
for her session that she's talking about is what she's talking about. Go ahead.
So the brain has to be relaxed. Scooby and Shaggy flying around the corner puts the brain on edge. So the brain can't relax and learn something new. I had an adult who was brain training for anxiety, and he had great sessions, and then he just started having crazy sessions. And so, I ask all the questions. Are you tired, hungry, all the things during your session? And he said, no, I'm watching this new show. It's a gangster show. I can't even remember.
I think I watched that too, so I know my brain was on.
Yes. So it puts the brain on edge, and we want the brain relaxed. So during a session, 2 things are happening. So you'll have a little home training unit. It's about the size of this. And then we have these little sensors and ear clips. They'll be attached to your head and your ears. And during the session, the little sensors are constantly measuring the brain waves of where you're training. So if they're too high or too low, because they should be a certain magnitude, the screen goes dim and the volume goes down, because it's trying to get the brain's attention. The brain wants the reward to watch it brightly and loudly. So to get the brain's attention, the screen will go dim and the volume goes down. And the brain's like, hey, I was watching that.
Interesting. So it alerts you and tells you this is causing something that's dysregulated. Is the problem. Okay.
Yes. So then the other thing that's happening in the background, so there's 26 protocols. So whatever the map shows is the correct protocol for you. That's what's in the system. So there's a little subtle blinking that goes on in the background. So that's why you have to enjoy what you're watching. You have to be focused on the screen to watch it, because then it's going to take those dysregulated brain waves and re-regulate them correctly. So if your alpha beta is dysregulated too high, it's going to bring those into normal range, and then you won't have anxiety and depression and symptoms of fibromyalgia or migraines.
That's good. So So this is a non-invasive, and let me put a stop.
Non-invasive.
This is non-invasive process. So nothing that you've described so far to me would make me feel like I'm not about to do that, because
No,
that's
there's nothing
poking me
scary
and doing
about
stuff.
it. Right. There's nothing painful about it. Um, this is a question I get from a lot of parents. Will my child become somebody different? I've
That is a
even gotten
very,
that
yeah,
from
that was
some
actually
adults.
literally one of the questions I have for
Yes.
you. Is this going to change the trajectory or the
No.
outcome of how that person thinks and how they act? And are they a whole new creature in Christ, almost like, I mean, a whole new
Yes,
being?
right. So what it does when we have regulated brain waves, then we are just the best version of ourselves. Because then we can make better choices. I see a lot of women who unfortunately have had a lot of abuse problems in the past. And so that causes them to make poor choices because they're dysregulated. And once they get regulated, then they make the correct choices, whatever those choices are. They have the ability to say yes or no or whatever it is.
So, because I'm trying to visualize everything. So this is so
Yes.
important to me. I have different images. So tell me when I can pop some of them up. If that breaks the process down, I can pop some of these visuals, because I'm a big visual person.
I'm a
So
visual person
okay.
too.
So let's look at this and see if this
Sure.
is, talk to me about this.
Yes. So if we start at the bottom, see the delta, the kind of turquoise, those brain waves are deep, dreamless sleep. So
Mhm.
if they are too high or too low, for instance, for a ADHD, I keep talking about that, but I see a lot of children with delta theta dysregulation, and you'll see the green ones. Those
Yes.
those are the deep relaxation ones. So if delta should be at 12, theta should be at 10. Well, if they're at 18 and 20 or higher, then that child has really high delta theta, which it should be during your sleep state. But if it's like that during the day, then you're dysregulated and the brain is acting out to do things that it should not be doing.
Mm.
Um, so for people who have anxiety or depression, if you look at the yellow one, that's the alpha,
Mhm.
and then the beta one. If those are dysregulated, usually with those people, their alpha will just be higher than their delta.
Okay.
And so they're anxious about everything. And if we can bring that down to where it should be, alpha should be at 10. Even some people, it'll be incredibly low. So then that causes the other problems to happen. For the SMR up, so SMR up is peak performance. You'll read about a lot of professional athletes. I believe Kirk Cousins is one of them because I've had clients tell me, hey, I saw him do an interview about brain training. So they travel with neurofeedback systems because they want to be the best they can be. Like golfers, they brain train so that they can block out crowd noise.
Hmm.
So they do SMR protocol. I also have clients who do SMR protocol. I'll have patients. I have a scheduled appointment this afternoon at 3 o'clock for a new client, and I've already told the parent based on what she told me, we're probably going to have to go home and do SMR up for a
Mm.
couple of weeks to calm everything down so that
Okay.
the child could actually sit through a map. Um, because we want to get the most accurate reading possible.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. This is just some great information that I think everybody in the world needs to know.
Yes,
What
right.
what is the difference between, I'm leaning in looking at the picture, but
Sure.
what is the difference between this and a sleep study? Because it reminds me of when people are monitoring the brain waves and things during a sleep study. What's the difference?
Well, so what we're doing, we're measuring the magnitude of that,
Oh,
like how strong they are or how weak they are. Because I don't think I quite finished what I was talking about before. So we look for three things. We want them to be in a certain order. We want them to be delta, theta, alpha, beta, and high beta. We want them to be in that order. We want them to be at a certain magnitude, and we want the left and right to work together. So we want it to converge. I'll have, well, lots of people, their very first few sessions, they'll be out of order. They won't be converging, like the lines just look a mess. And then as their brain gets used to it, then you see the converging going on. The left and right is working together. Then you see them get in the order that they should be in. And then their magnitude will work. I had a client, she had a lot of trauma, and she quickly converged. And then, after a little bit of training, she got in order, but we could not get her magnitude to move. And, they were all between like 4 and 8, and they should be between like 4 and 12. So you can just imagine they're just all together. And one day they moved, and I was so excited. So this is a patient who had anxiety and depression. And so you're trying to be careful about how you deal with them. You don't want to increase their anxiety.
that's right.
So I didn't want to reach out right away. But the next day it had moved. So then April's curious. I want to see what's going on because I want us to repeat that behavior. So I reach out to her and I'm like, hey, your magnitude moved. Are you doing anything special? And she said, I wasn't going to tell you. I wanted to see if you noticed.
Right.
And she had been on some medication and she came off the medication. And that medication allowed her, coming off of it, allowed her magnitude to
Oh,
move it. Yes, exactly.
that is
Um,
huge. And so when
yes,
something like that happens, what does that do for you
that's the
emotionally,
reward
spiritually,
I
mentally? What
get.
does that do?
Yes, yeah, that's the reward I get from this. I mean, what price can you put on you help somebody have a better quality of life? You really can't. And that's what brain training does. It just helps you have a better quality of life. I have another person, she's a therapist and she's referred people to me, but she came into brain train. And when she started seeing me, she was on stimulants. She had been really down. And she started brain training, and now she doesn't take the stimulants anymore. She just has a better quality of life.
Wow. Let me ask a question about that.
Yes.
Because is the goal to get them off of the medication that they're on
So
through your
I'm
brain
not a
training program?
doctor, and I always want you to talk to your doctor about it. But
That's what I
that's
want.
what usually happens. Once you get regulated, there's no reason to have them. I had she was, I think, her sophomore year in college. I can't remember it. I have to go back and look. But it was during COVID, and she had terrible anxiety and depression. And so she found a way to take all online classes to avoid any social circumstance at all. Well, then she brain trained. And when she brain trained, she was able to move schools. She moved out of state. Then she changed her major to psychology and was doing her senior thesis on anxiety and depression and neurofeedback. So it just helps you have a better quality of life. Like I had a woman, a trauma specialist, sent her to me, and the woman was raised in an occult. I don't know what it was or anything, but she had the day before she came to see me, she was already scheduled, but it just so happened she got fired from her job. She was a nurse. She was raised in the military, or, an army brat, moved all over the place. She herself had done several tours in Afghanistan, and she had a lot of issues. And she started brain training. And about 2 months in, one night she sent me a text and she said, I have never experienced joy and happiness in my life. I don't even know what to do with these emotions. And, she just had a lot of issues going on, and it helped. She got regulated, and then she was able to feel those, emotions.
Okay.
Exactly. Praise the Lord. Yes.
This is almost, in my opinion, this is definitely, again, like a ministry that you're offering
So
to
that's
help
what
people
I
just,
tell my friends. It is like a ministry. You help people have a better quality of life. We all have issues, and, you know, whether it's emotional, psychological, physical things that have happened, all of those things cause dysregulation, drugs, whatever it is. And then we're not able to be the best we can be. But once we get regulated, then we are. I have wives who will send their husbands in here, and the husbands don't complete the paperwork because they didn't really
right,
want to come anyway. They're just here because their wife sent them. And then as we're reviewing it, it's called the report of findings. Before you come in, you complete a cognitive emotional checklist.
mhm,
And then when we do the QEG, the QEG compares what your cognitive emotional checklist said, and if they didn't fill it out, so there's nothing to compare it to. So I'm just
right,
reviewing what the QEEG said, and they're like, "Well, how do you know that?" Because I'll be like, "Well, you have a high probability of this, or a
right.
moderate probability of this," and they're like, "Well, how do you know?" And I'm like, "Well, your brain waves tell so much about you." And
Wow.
so when they're dysregulated, it causes these problems. And, when you brain train and you get regulated, you just feel better.
Wow. Listen, everybody, today we're talking with our guest, April Gregory, who is discussing how we can train our brains. How can we train the brain? And her website is BrainCore East Tennessee.com. I want to make sure we take a quick commercial break, and we're going to come back and hear more from April Martin Gregory. We'll be right back, everyone, right after this break.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kim Jacobs, the Managing Director of the Charlotte, North Carolina chapter of eWomen Network. I am so excited that you stopped to watch this video. I've got good news for you. You've just discovered an international network of women entrepreneurs who are committed to helping you achieve, succeed, and prosper. We're on a mission here to help 1 million women entrepreneurs each achieve $1 million in annual revenue. Here at eWomen Network, we have a complete success system that supports you every step of the way in building and growing your business. You being here right now is no accident. We're supposed to know about you. We want to meet you to find out how we can help you, as well as learn about what you have to offer. With over 500,000 women connected through 118 chapters across the United States, Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom, you are never alone. If this is resonating with you, please go to ewomennetwork.com/Charlotte. Notice too my contact information. I invite you to reach out to me and to check out our upcoming in-person and online events. I'm really looking forward to introducing you to our special community.
All right, everyone, we are back and we're talking with April Gregory. I do want to let you know that we have a couple of things coming up with eWomen Network. One is our actual summit that's going to be in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. And it's annually where we get a chance to hear from Sandra Yancey, who is a former CNN hero and wonderful business executive. She's going to be talking to us about how to unlock success secrets. And I'll put the way that you can register right in the comment section. That's going to be April 30th at the Charlotte Museum of History. And then we have also Juanita Corey Jackson, CEO of Global Impact University Consulting, will be our speaker talking about living to be born uncommon. And I'll put how you can register to be a part of our accelerated networking luncheon coming up March 21st. Now, if you're watching this broadcast at a different date than March 21st or April 30th, that means that you're watching the replay, and you should stay put and benefit from all of the information that is happening here through April Martin Gregory. All right, so April, when I think of this process, it's exciting. It's very exciting to me, but I'm trying to determine, you said it's not like hypnosis, correct?
No, nothing like that. No.
Nothing like hypnosis, which that was a question that I personally had.
Yeah.
And then what does this session entail? Like from the beginning to the end, what can a person expect?
Okay, so for the QEG, you come in, you should have completed the documents that I email you.
Good.
Come in, I measure you to see what size electro cap you wear, put it on. We put gel in each of the sensors, and that just amplifies the brain waves because that's what we're measuring. Then the first half of it, you sit there with your eyes closed. The second half, you have your eyes open. If a normal person can do this all in less than 30 minutes, a child can take a long time just because they're distracted. And as soon as they're distracted, the QEG knows, so it stops recording. And as soon as they get refocused, it'll record again. But at the end of the QEG, then we upload it, and then we go over the report of findings. And it'll show us the 4 most dysregulated sites. It'll show us any delta, theta, alpha, beta dysregulation, and then we'll compare those symptoms, what you said to what the QEEG said. Then it'll give us the protocol, and then it has a page that is specifically about you. It'll talk about if you had high posterior delta and if you did, what those symptoms would be. I get a lot of people with sensory integration, especially children, like noises, taste, sounds. Those things can really set the child off. And then once they become regulated, then those symptoms won't be there. I had a little girl, she had very long hair. And she came in and, I measured her, put the cap on her, and then we put the gel on, and she just had a meltdown. I was never able to map that child because she could not deal with the texture of the gel. So 2 of my favorite stories about brain training. One was a little girl during COVID. She was about 12 years old. She already had anxiety and ADHD, but she picked up a tick. And she was licking her fingers, and she would wipe under her eye. And she did it so many times a day, she didn't even know she was doing it. And when she came into my office, she just had this dirty spot, from where she wiped it. Well, the mother was beside herself, as you can imagine, because of COVID and the little girl doing that. Well, we tried to map her, but she just could not sit still. So what we did is I sent her home with a system, and she did SMR up, which is that peak performance protocol, and it just kind of calms everything down. Well, in about 3 days, the mother called me, and she said, is this for real? And I said, yes. Why? And she said she's already stopped it. And it's because she had just started doing it. We were able to stop that dysregulation very quickly. Well, she still needed to do SMR up for a couple of weeks so that she could calm down for her to come in so I could map her. And the next to last session this little girl had was just a crazy session, because I can tell after you train for a few days, what your sessions are going to look like. And so when I see a dysregulation, I'm going to ask you about it so we can address it. Were you upset when you trained? Were you hungry? Were you tired? So then we know, well, let's make sure we've eaten before we train, or let's don't train when we're tired, because we want to get the best session we can. But anyway, this kid had an off the chart session for her. So I reached out to the mom and I was like, was she tired and hungry, all the things? She goes, no. Do you remember when you told me it was good for anyone? And because I always say that, SMR up is good for everyone. And I said, yes. And she goes, well, I tried it. So it was the mom session I was seeing, not the little girls. And I was
Oh, so
okay.
wait. This is epic.
Yeah.
It's like, wait.
Yes.
So what I'm hearing you say is the mom officially
She signed in.
session
She
from
brain
at
trained.
home,
Yeah.
and you were seeing her readings, not the readings of the
Right.
child.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the mom needed the brain training too, technically.
She did. Yes, she did.
She was off the charts, meaning dysregulated
yes,
and
very dysregulated. Not in order. Magnitude was off. She was not converging. All the things. And her daughter did have things. She was much better than the mom.
right.
Yes.
Okay, so this is something that you clearly are passionate about,
Very.
and you became certified as a certified BrainCore technician. What made you want to do this as a business? Because it's one thing to do it yourself because you have a brain disorder, but it's another thing to start taking it on as your real full passion in business. Why?
Well, after I brain trained and I saw the results, and my husband brain trained and my grandson brain trained, I just kept researching it. It was so fascinating to me that we could do something to change our brain health and make it better. And so I still to this day research spasmodic dysphonia. And it's just who my personality is. So then, I just felt that same passion towards neurofeedback. Like, no one ever talks about that we could do anything for our brain. And so I just continued to research it, and that's how I ended. Because think about, I'm only seeing a few people in the world, but if you get those few people get better, then it makes the people around them, their lives better.
Oh, yes. And I mean, and again, it's not even just casting judgment on anybody else. It sounds like we all can benefit from having some level of brain training so that we can course correct whatever is
Right.
out of sync or the equilibrium or whatever the right wording is. It's just, it synergizes everything is what I'm hearing.
Yes. People who have had traumatic childhoods, and I see a lot of that. So what happens is they overcompensate for whatever those issues were. And most of the time we overcompensate incorrectly. So then when they come in and they're mapped, and then we see all those issues, and then they start to brain drain, and then those issues get corrected, then you just, I say it 100 times. I know it's a broken record, but then you have a better quality of life. What if you got up and you felt like doing things, or you could read something and retain it, or you weren't emotional, or you weren't passive aggressive, or you weren't, I see a lot of OCD people. What if you weren't obsessive about things, or rumination? I get a lot of rumination, and that's just going over and over things. I have rumination. So if you get that corrected, I had a therapist. She was brain training, and rumination was one of her things. And on about day or 3 or 4, she called me and she said, well, I've tried to ruminate, but it won't let me, because we get obsessive in our thinking. We just keep going over the list or whatever it is, or self-deprecation, all those things. And if you stop those things, think about how your life would be.
Yes. Life would be just, I can think of so many people, and I can think of myself.
Yes.
And because you don't always, I'm assuming you don't even always know what's wrong with you to be able to know what to do to correct you, right?
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly right. We don't know that we have those issues, so like I'll have people come in. I had, he was 18. He wanted to be in some certain branch of the military, but if you had been diagnosed with ADHD, you could not qualify for that. So he came in, and when he was like in elementary school, he was diagnosed with ADHD. Well, he came in and he was mapped, and he didn't have any ADHD, but he had really high anxiety. And I think what happens with kids, they'll say their stomach hurts because they don't have the words for it. They don't know how to say, I'm anxious about this.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm like, well, when you were a child, did you have a lot of stomach problems? Did your stomach hurt? And I think that's the butterflies that they feel, and they don't really know how to put that into words. Even adults don't know how to put that into words.
That's right.
And so, one of the things under the delta theta column when we're going over the report of findings is excessive speech. And I think people with anxiety will have excessive speech. Let's say I have anxiety and I'm talking to you and you're just sitting there for a moment. Well, I'll try to just talk about anything to fill the void because I'm uncomfortable that there's no one talking. And it becomes excessive speech because we're uncomfortable. And so people might think that I have ADHD when really I have anxiety and I'm just uncomfortable because we're not talking. And I feel like somebody should be talking.
Somebody needs to be filling in the blanks.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. We're going to take a moment to hear from some of our viewers. I know our audio listeners on podcasts, you're not able to chime in right at this moment, but if you do have questions or comments, you can put them in any of the audio platforms that you subscribe to as well. But if we can, let's pull up some of these comments, Mackenzie, that are back here. Mackenzie's backstage, everybody. If you hear me say another name outside of April, thank you, Mackenzie, for being back there. All right, let's see. So does it redo the wiring of your brain?
Yes, so that's a good way to put it. We call it pathways, but wiring's a good way too. Again, it's that order we want them in. We want them in a certain magnitude, and we want the left and right to converge and work together. So that's what neurofeedback does, is it gets them in order, it gets them at the correct magnitude, and the left and right working together. So yes, that's rewiring of the brain.
That's a really great question too. I didn't even know that we could train our brain, is what Mackenzie says. She's like, how do we train? How did you even know this even existed until you came along, April?
Right. Yeah, I didn't know that either. And, because of my brain disorder, you just research everything out there. What can you do to change the brain? And that's how I knew about it for 25 years before I ever experienced it.
And yeah, go ahead.
It's an amazing technology. One of the developers of BrainCore, which is what I'm certified to do, his son was autistic, and he and some other people are the developers of it. But now his son is a pilot because he brain trained, and it just changes your life.
And that can work for possibly any child on the spectrum, because I know that there are some that are high performing, and then there are some that
it's really like nonverbal, and not me personally, but other technicians have had nonverbal autistic children speak from brain training.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yes.
So there are some. Wow. Okay. Again, she's already expressed that she's not a medical physician. She's brain trained certified, yes, and went through a training process for that. But according to the National Institute of Health, neurofeedback is not a new concept, it says. It has been the subject of the study of researchers for several decades. It's a method that assists subjects to control their brain waves consciously. Yes. In fact, the electroencephalography, EEG, is recorded during the neurofeedback treatment. Then its various components are extracted and fed to subjects using online feedback loop in the form of audio, video, and their combination. So this just pretty much endorses everything that you're here talking about today.
Yes. So that QEEG is That's what it does. It measures those brain waves. Then we brain train, and then we can see it as it changes. I had a little girl, she was ADHD, had all of her normal sessions. And then one day she had this crazy session, reached out to the mom, asked all the questions, hungry, tired, irritable. No, she said, nope, her daughter was having a great day. Well, about 30 minutes later, the mom called me back, and this was a child who was gluten-free and sugar-free, not because of me, but, at home, she was sugar-free and gluten-free. And the child admitted that she had snuck and eaten 3 cupcakes. And so I saw what that did to her brain. And for like 2 months after that, every time I would think about eating sugar, I would remember what it did to her brain waves. So you just see all kinds of things that impact the brain waves. So I lost your...
Yes, I didn't lose anything. I intentionally backed out of the studio for a minute because when we're talking about balancing life, and I'm the balance doctor, I had a doctor call right now in the middle of the show pertaining to one of my children, and I didn't want to let it go to voicemail, but I'm grateful that you carried on with your answer.
Yes.
Thank you. And okay, so there are more comments that's coming in, and I want to make sure we go ahead and answer some more of these questions. Let's keep them coming up. I've learned a lot from hearing you today already, April. What are some of the other comments backstage, if you could pop them up? Okay, hold on. Let me go and see if I can find them. All right, what is a brain fog, and will the training of the brain be able to make changes?
So brain fog, lots of things could cause your hormones, medication, all those things can cause brain fog. But if it's dysregulation that's causing it, and dysregulation could cause it in the cognitive part of the brain, then when you get regulated, and, I think about before I brain trained, I was just, that part of my life, I would read something, have to read it 3 times and be like, what is that saying? And then when I brain trained, I got it the first time and I was like, hey, this is amazing. And that's what really stuck with me. That's what drove me to be a BrainCore technician.
So the people officially know that they're better themselves, because it's not like I come to this brain training session, I'm home and I'm going through this training. I know based on the outcome of just how my behavior is, how I'm personally changed, that I'm better.
Yeah. I'm talking to them all the time. How are you sleeping? Because that's the number one thing. I had a doctor who came in just to sleep, because you can imagine how their schedules are crazy. Right. And when he was home, he could not sleep. So then he started brain training. He was able to sleep. But with all my patients, that's one of the things that I'm checking with all the time. I want to make sure it's helping you sleep better, because then you can function better. When we don't sleep well, we don't function well. And I have a lot of people who will train at night because it relaxes the brain, so then they can go right to sleep. My granddaughter brain trains, and I go into the living room and watch her session, because it impacts her session if I'm sitting right beside her.
Right.
So I go watch her session, and I can just watch the brain waves go down, and I can tell when she's gone to sleep. So then I go get her, but she'll say, I don't want to go to sleep, because she knows it'll make her calm down.
Really calm. He's like, look,
really
I'm not
calm
taking a
down
nap during this session.
Yes.
That's funny. But Dr. Tina Ramsey she is in charge of CTR Media Network, and that's a streaming service where I'm a part of it as well. We stream to 100 countries and over 350 million households worldwide. Yes. And she is the founder of CTR Media Network. So she said hello to you today.
Hello.
She's watching. All right. Who else is on? We have more comments? All right. Let me go to a few more comments here. I saw quite a few come in, so I'm just going to grab
Sure.
them. Let me see. Kimberly Fallis said, this is awesome information.
Thank you.
Let me see. All right, let's see. Yes, indeed. Total balance is much needed to get back to caring for ourselves, Belinda Williams said.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So CTR Media, is medication a solution to anxiety, in your
Well,
opinion?
you can brain drain for anxiety. I have a ton of anxiety patients, mainly if you're a child, you're ADHD, though some of them can also have anxiety, but a lot of adults have anxiety. And if you don't treat anxiety, it becomes depression because, you become antisocial and all those things, and that becomes depressive. So if you can catch it when it's anxiety, then it won't lead to the depression. But I have many people who treat for anxiety. Um, it just changes their lives.
Right, right. That's good to. So people that have experienced anxiety have benefited from the brain training as well. And Belinda Williams also asked, she said, balancing home life, marriage, family, church, caring for an ill children, and outside activities can be just overwhelming for her. And not just her, but any mother that deals with these types of things.
Yeah.
And she said, I deserve some me time. And you want to
So
speak to that at all?
yes. So I even tell children that because sometimes it's hard to motivate a child to want to brain train. I tell the parent to try to come up with something positive to maybe they get to earn screen time or whatever it is that will motivate that child. But even for adults, and I tell the child, it's me time. You get to go watch what you want for 30 minutes. Nobody is going to be in the room with you because we don't want distractions. No pets in the room, nothing in your hand. You can't be eating or drinking. You want it to be a clinical setting as much as possible. So you're watching that screen so the screen can allow the brain to rewire itself.
Good.
But
That's
yeah,
really
so
good.
30 minutes a day that you get to, I have a lot of women who brain trained the Gilmore Girls, which I had never watched. So they'll be in my office brain training and I'm hearing it, but I'm not watching it because I'm watching the other screen.
Yeah, right.
This is my brain training screen right back there. And then I have a screen up here. And, you could just tell the more they watched the show, the more relaxed they got, and they would leave here. Well, I even tell them you can just see it, but I want them to recognize it. Do you feel more relaxed?
Yes.
Because it relaxes you, and then you can go on about your day. If you're home training, you can home train multiple times a day. You just need to wait 3 hours in between sessions because we wouldn't work out at the gym more than once in 3 hours.
Correct.
And so it builds on itself. So like the brain, let's say you brain trained at 9 o'clock this morning and you're going to brain train at 9 o'clock tonight. Well, it remembers what it did much sooner at 9 o'clock this morning, as opposed to if you're coming to my office and you see me on Monday and Thursday. Well, on Thursday, it's taking it a little bit longer to remember what it did on Monday. So if you brain train at home, it just happens faster. I have people who get really stressed and they'll go brain train just to calm down.
That's really, I'm so excited that you're my guest today. And Belinda also asked, how do you find balance between work, family, and the outside world? I can answer as well as the balance doctor that just keep in mind, Belinda, that no two households are alike. Everyone's unique and in your own right. So whatever works for your household may or may not work for someone else's, but I recommend strongly that you identify some of the things that are stressors in your life and identify things that are time killers, things that are things that kind of really take away from you being able to have some me time. When can you prioritize to maximize your own individual life. So I recommend strongly that you look at assessing your life and identifying in that 24-hour period what can you really devote your time to effectively, because you can't give more than 100%.
Right.
So really kind of pie chart that out and make some decisions in your life as to what merits your time and your energy. And that's for me, Kim Jacobs, the Balance Doctor. Go ahead. You want to say anything?
Me, I 100% agree with that. If you're not taking care of yourself, how can you take care of others?
That's right. Bottom line, you can't.
Yeah.
I've often heard people say you cannot give to others from an
An
empty
empty
cup.
cup.
You have to give from your overflow. So fill
Amen.
your own cup up, and then you'll be able to help everyone else with what's dripping into the saucer. Okay.
Yes.
Make sure you know that. I see,
Yes.
Rasheen, you said this information is so helpful for navigating, caring for an adult children as well as younger school-based children. I'm going to be sharing this information with all of my adult children too.
Perfect.
Sure.
Perfect.
I agree, because there are some things that your children may never get tested for.
Yes.
But this doesn't seem like it's disorder driven. It seems like if you just want to get better in your brain in some capacity, just try it.
Yes.
So I love it. I did want to ask one final question here. How long does it take to be regulated and stay regulated?
Those are excellent questions. So everybody's different. One of the forms you'll fill out is a metabolic form, like somebody I saw right before you. Her metabolic number, I believe it was like 236, which is very high. So it will take her a little longer than it would somebody who has a much lower metabolic number. And as far as how long does it last, once you get re-regulated, and it stays there unless you have another traumatic experience or something like that, which is amazing.
That is really good to know too. Very good. So once you get regulated, there's a way for you to kind of just maintain a maintenance phase.
Yeah. Yes. Occasionally I'll have somebody come in and say they want to tune up or whatever. But so when I was doing my training, we talked about drug addiction and alcohol addiction and all the studies they had done, and all, like alcoholics, for example, they had done talk therapy and they had done the 12-step program. And then some of them just did one of those. And then the ones that included the neurofeedback, 3 years later, were still abstaining because they had regulated their dysregulation. And I thought that was so powerful. Yes.
It is. It is. Now I see some different images back here. Did you want to say anything before we close out on any of these? I think you talked about them.
Yes, we've talked about all of those things. Those are just issues that neurofeedback can help. And the other ones are, so if you have beta dysregulation, whether it's high or low, those are symptoms that you could have. If not all of them, some people have many of them. Some of them only have one. And there's one for alpha dysregulation.
Okay.
And then the same symptoms, like if it's dysregulated, those are symptoms you could have.
Okay. Wow. Is there a closing comment that you'd like to share with everyone?
I feel like that if we should do something for our brain health. There's a website, and I wrote it down. I believe it's braintherapy.com, and I can look that up for you. But you can type in your zip code. I know there's somebody in the Apex, North Carolina area that you could go be mapped and get your results. And if they didn't offer home training and you want to home train with me, reach out to me and I can ship you a system. But we do have to have the QEG because I'm here in Tennessee. But there's brain training centers all across.
What is QEG?
The QEG is what measures it.
Oh, that means okay. I just want to make sure that the people that may be just tuning in here.
Yeah, it's the map. And so that's what tells us what the brain waves are doing, and it gives us the protocol.
You said that earlier, but I just want to make sure everybody knows. Now,
But
staying connected with you, because any of the resources that April Gregory is discussing, you can get them from her too. She'll be able to send that
yes,
directly to you. Her phone number is 423-361-8235. Again, 423-361-8235. And her website is BrainCore East Tennessee.com. Email address is april@braincoreeasttennessee.com. All right. Any final thought?
just take care of yourself. Check on your brain health, because you'll be better for yourself and the people around you. It gives you the tools in the toolbox to make better choices.
Wow. Tools in the toolbox to make better choices, everybody. I think that we've had an excellent, informative session today with April Martin Gregory, and I'm honored that you are here today. So thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much for letting me talk about my passion.
I can feel the passion even
Yeah.
virtually. It's like,
Yes, yes. I always tell people, hey, stop me if I'm talking too much, because I could talk about BrainCore all day long.
no, you just talked just right for us to be able to understand and benefit from everything that you shared as we're bringing balance to this world, one household at a time. If you are benefiting from any of the episodes of the Kim Jacobs Show in your own personal household, make sure you take a moment and pour into our broadcast, the ministry that we do have as we're bringing balance to this world, one household at a time. You can cash out Kimjacobsinc, or paypal.me/Kimjacobsinc, or even Venmo at the Kim Jacobs Show. So thank you so much for those that already do support, and for those that will be supporting in the future.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, on that note, we're going to close out. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I absolutely love you guys, and honored to be able to be in your household Monday through Friday at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right. Thank you, April. You're amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. I just love BrainCore and what it does. So
I'm
thank you
so
for letting me.
happy that God put this in your spirit to do.
Yes, for
It's
sure.
a game
Me
changer.
too.
All right, everybody, have a great one. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Kim Jacobs Show, and for being in the virtual studio audience. Your presence truly does make a difference, and I look forward to you bringing your friends and family to join you in the virtual studio audience Monday through Friday at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time.